Let's start with our motivation. And really thinking of the kindness of others and how everything we have depends on the effort of other sentient beings. And that if we were left on this planet on our own, we would probably die fairly quickly because we don't really know how to take care of ourselves, especially in this modern world where we're so used to, all these conveniences. As soon as we're separated from the people who know how all these things work, then we no longer have them, and it could be very difficult to stay alive. So really appreciating the efforts of other sentient beings and the benefit that we reap from their efforts. And in this way, generating the wish to return the help that they give us, and knowing that the best way to help them is to be able to lead them out of samsara. And to do that, we have to not only know the path and not only practice it, but have realizations. And specifically, the best realization is that of full awakening. And so let's set that as our ultimate goal, so that we can affect the welfare of all living beings. Alex from Germany wrote in a whole page full of really good questions about the last session, so I thought that I would start with that. She had been reading on Alex Berzin's website, and so some things had about karma, and so some things had gotten clearer, and she also had some questions. So she said that Alex Berzin writes that karma is the mental urge. So the subsidiary awareness that causes mental activity to face an object or to go in its direction. In general, it moves a mental continuum to cognitively take an object that brings us in the direction of a particular experience. Karma is not an action itself. Okay, so I know that Alex is a friend of mine, and so instead of the word intention, he uses the word urge, probably because intention sounds like it's very well planned, and some of our intentions are not very well planned. They are more like urges in the sense of an idea popping into our mind and then we act it out. So although we use the word intention for that mental factor, don't think of it as you're sitting there cogitating, developing an intention. It can also just be, this, it's not quite an urge either. It's kind of halfway between an urge and an intention. Okay? So some of our intentions certainly are well thought out, and some of them are just, we're operating on automatic, or some thought pops in our mind or whatever. Okay? But when he says karma is not an action itself, okay, I don't agree with that. I think what he's meaning there is that karma is this mental factor of intention, or urge as he translates it. But remember last week we also said that karma could be the verbal or physical action as well. So when we talk, for example, about the 10 non-virtues, all 10 are pathways of karma. The first 7 are karmas, and the last 3 are afflictions. Okay, so I wouldn't agree that karma is not an action itself. I think we often say that karma is that mental factor of intention, but it can also be an action.
Maybe he was explaining it from a lower school's point of view.
Yeah, he might have been. Except that the Vaibhasikas also say that actions can be physical and verbal.
Yeah, if he was explaining my mental factors, that would have been from...
Yeah, from Satantrika viewpoint.
Could be though that like the action of stepping on an ant, the action is not the karma, but the intention to kill would be the karma.
Well, if you, yeah, that's what I'm saying. That we went through this last week.
No.
That what what the karma is the intention.
Right. So
Yeah, but there's also the verbal and physical karma. So karma isn't only the mental factor of intention. It's primarily that, but from a prasangika view, it includes the actions itself.
Right, but what I'm trying to say is that maybe he's saying that a physical action without any of the other accompanying things is not a karma.
Oh, perhaps he's saying that, but it isn't clear. Yeah, if that's what he's saying. Okay, so she was saying that she liked the translation urge, because she says, sometimes I feel this urge to act or say something even though I don't want to. And sometimes it is as if I have no choice at that moment but to act. So that's how on automatic many of our intentions are, and how little mindfulness and introspective awareness and self-restraint we have. Yeah. And then she said, the action itself is what I call positive karmic force, sonam, or merit. So he's saying the action is merit, or a negative karma force, digpa, which I translate as negativity. Other people translate it as sin, but I hate that word. Okay, so he's saying that merit and negativity refer to the action itself, which acts as a karmic force. But then before he said that the merit and the negativity were karmic forces. So I don't know what all of his vocabulary here means, and what is standard vocabulary, and what is how he's created things. But usually we don't say that the action is merit. We say the action is meritorious, or the action is negative. It's not that the action is negativity, okay? But it does create, what he calls a karmic force. It does create that energy. And merit is what gives rise to a result that's pleasing to the mind, and negativity is what gives rise to a result that's displeasing to the mind. Okay, so I'm not quite sure about... And then he said, when it's finished, there is the karmic aftermath, which continues with our mental continuum, karmic potentials, tendencies, constant habits, and so on. So that's what he's calling a karmic aftermath. We would say our karmic seeds, yeah, or jigpa, if you look at it from, the prasangika view. But the prasangikas, they say that there's jigpa, and they also say there's seeds, both of them. Okay, but when disturbing emotions and attitudes activate them, this karmic aftermath ripens into various consequences in our moment-to-moment experience. So there he's talking about, we have these latencies or seeds on our mind stream that can get activated not only, I think, by the afflictions, but they can get activated by the external circumstances. They can get activated by virtuous minds as well. Yeah, they can get activated by, being in the presence of holy beings when you have a lot of receptivity and devotion. Okay, so there's a lot of things that can activate these kind of potentials. The seeds or the latencies are neutral themselves. While we often say a virtuous karmic seed, it's more accurate to say a seed of virtuous karma, because the seed itself is neither virtuous nor non-virtuous. It itself is neutral, but the action or the intention that created it is virtuous or non-virtuous, meritorious or non-meritorious. Okay. And then she was saying, I thought when I took a precept, for example, not to kill, that I create merit in each moment that I'm keeping the precept, which is true. But then Alex writes, yeah, he said, I don't think about going out and murdering people. So the fact that I don't murder people is not the constructive action of refraining from killing people. I think what he's doing here is he's not talking about a person who has precepts. He's talking about somebody, just the average person who doesn't have precepts. Okay, so the constructive action would be like if there were a mosquito buzzing around my head and I felt like killing it, but I think about the consequences of killing and I don't kill it. Okay, at that point, restraining myself from killing is the constructive action of not killing. So, okay, so you can see that there has to be a deliberate intention. Now, why is, he doesn't really agree with this thing, because he continues. When we talk about this type of constructive behavior of refraining from the destructive actions, it is very active. It is not just, well, I never kill, so I might as well take a vow not to kill. That is not strong enough. Of course, taking a vow is always beneficial, but the real constructive action is restraining ourselves from a destructive action when we feel like doing it, and restraining ourselves because we understand the consequences. Okay, so that, you know, of course, when you're right there and there's this urge to do something and you refrain yourself, you know, that's very active and you are, you know, creating virtue at that moment. That's the virtuous action of, you know, the constructive action. However, you can't just say that it has to be so active and with so much strong determination in the moment, because what about people who have very well-trained minds, you know, like the bodhisattvas, who they don't have the urge to kill. So if you restrict it to just, you know, having the urge to do it and then, you know, cogitating and thinking about the consequences and everything like that, well, bodhisattvas don't do that. You know, they don't have much of an intention to kill. And if a slight one arises, they immediately release it without a lot of effort. So I don't think that creating the constructive karma, in ordinary people, yes, it requires a lot of effort, but the more you practice, it requires less and less effort. Okay? And the thing about keeping precepts is, you know, when you take the precept, you're creating a very strong intention. That mental factor of intention is very strong. And plus, with the pratimoksha precepts anyway, not with the bodhisattva and tantric precepts, but with the pratimoksha precepts, then you're having the precept body, this imperceptible form that is like a dam that prevents you from doing the action. So it doesn't need to be that every single moment you have to be thinking, I'm not going to kill, I'm not going to kill, I'm not going to kill, you know, because you've made that strong determination beforehand, and that continues on a subliminal level. Yeah. Okay. Otherwise, if it didn't, then why would the Buddha have us take precepts? because they're, you know, the precepts wouldn't help restrain and they wouldn't help purify, but they do, because they say that precepts, particularly because of making a very strong determination not to do the action, what it does is it purifies the result similar to the cause in terms of our habitual action. Okay, do you see how that works? If we have a precept, I'm not going to do that, then this karmic result of habitually doing the same action is getting stopped. Okay, so it purifies that karmic result. And yes, it purifies because, that result, which is the habitual habit, is getting stopped by the power of the intention of that occurs when you take the precept, which is why it's so important at the time, when the time comes to taking the precept. And I'm especially talking to our two people who are going for bhikshuni ordination now, is that you have a very strong motivation and you really do the visualization very well. And you form a very, very strong intention that, I'm not going to engage in these actions, and I am going to keep the precepts, and I am receiving the pure precepts. Yeah, so that you have that very strong conscious awareness when you're doing it. Okay, then let me just get this one ready to go. Okay, then she said that she was wondering, for example, many animals are used for experiments in laboratories and are kept in horrible conditions, and at the end they're just euthanized. So what kind of karma would somebody create who, motivated by compassion, rescues these animals by taking them out of the laboratory against the will of the owner? Okay, but how can somebody own another sentient being anyway? On the one hand, it is an act of stealing, but on the other, this person rescues so many sentient beings from getting killed and from horrible and painful experiences. So I think that part must be a virtuous action, but I'm not so sure about the stealing part. Yeah, I think she's right there. Saving life is definitely virtuous. Stealing is definitely non-virtuous. Yeah. A young man in Singapore wrote me at one point, and he, I think on his way to school, he had come across somewhere where they had some traps to, kill the mice. And he took the traps and threw them away, and then he wrote me and he said, did I commit a negative action of stealing? Yeah, even though I was motivated by compassion. So, the compassion to prevent death, yes, that part was virtuous. The act of stealing was non-virtuous. So I recommended that what he do is go to the person who's setting the trap and say, there's such things as have a heart trap that captures the mice and so on without killing them. And if you do that, I volunteer to take the mice far away and release them. So then both of our aims are met. Yeah. In terms of laboratory animals, I think probably they're going to go out and get some more mice, So, it's a very difficult thing because it's really dreadful to think of these poor creatures being injected with diseases and viruses and so on. And yet the people who do the research feel like I'm doing something virtuous because I'm trying to save human lives, but at the same time they're taking animals' lives. And so, there are such things as mixed karma. Yeah. Okay, and then she said, would destroying others' property, for example, scratching another person's car, result in the causally concordant result in the sense that one's own possessions get destroyed? Or could this act also fall into the category of stealing? So if you accidentally scratch somebody's car, that's an accident. There's no karmic potency involved in that. If you deliberately go and scratch somebody's car, there's definitely malice involved. And that seems to fall more under the category of stealing because you're destroying other people's property. Even though you're not taking it as your own, you're destroying the property. Okay. And so here, when we talk about the virtuous karma, one facet is just deliberately not doing the destructive karma, but another facet is doing the opposite. So if you think about, what about protecting people's property? Yeah, and people are going away and they ask you to keep your eye on something, and you do, or you take care of somebody else's possessions for them when they can't do it. And so just think of the kind of merit that creates, and then also what it does to your mind. Yeah, you can really see how the thing of doing the opposite of the 10 non-virtues is really very, very powerful. Yeah. Okay. Anything more on that? Okay, then. So last time I didn't read from the text, did I? I used the Lamrim Chenmo. Okay, but then, so let's go through the text itself right now. Yeah, because on page 17 it says, it's talking about a brief explanation of powerful karma. Okay, so there's 4 ways in which it's powerful with respect to the field, the basis, which means the person who's doing the action itself, and with the intention behind the action. Okay, so in terms with respect to the field, so the field here means the recipient of the action. Okay, so in relation to the 3 jewels, gurus, objects of offering, parents, and so on, whatever good or harm you do, respectively, merit and negativity alike will be great. Okay, so we talked about that before. The 3 jewels in our spiritual mentor are powerful objects because of their virtue, our parents because of their kindness, the poor and the ill are because they require compassion, because they're suffering. Stealing the property of the 3 jewels is of the other 3 jewels, meaning the Buddha and the Dharma jewel, is repaired by returning it. Taking the sanghas is not purified until you experience the result. Okay, now that I'm not so sure about, because they say every action can be purified. So I think here what they're doing is making a very strong statement of be careful with the sangha's property. Okay, so robbing the sangha of their food source leads to rebirth in great hell. Stealing anything else of theirs leads to rebirth in darkness, adjacent to the unrelenting torment. So these are different hell realms, okay? So when you rob the sangha of their food source, clearly, if the sangha doesn't have food and can't eat, it's going to disrupt their practice. So that's going to be quite negative, okay? And then stealing anything else leads to maybe not quite such a bad result. But it's going to depend on what else you steal, too. Taking a pencil or taking $5,000, there's a big difference between it, okay? But the idea is to be very careful about things that belong to the Sangha community. And this includes if you are a Sangha member. Okay? So we've talked about this before. We have a mutual agreement. When guests come, we offer them food, we offer them drink, you know. So we're not stealing from the Sangha by offering people who come, you know, to share in our resources and things like that. Yeah. If somebody's injured, we share our medical supplies. You know, if somebody forgot their soap or their toothbrush, we share these kind of common things. We give them to the people. Yeah. But what we have to be careful of is, you know, if you're in charge of doing the books, or you're in charge of the money, if you're in charge of the storeroom, you know, either with the clothes in it or the material things or the food, you know, to make sure that things get used properly. And as community members, we don't just go in and help ourselves to different things unless it's already known to the community that we can go. So I think pretty much we've decided that the coat closets we can go into, the extra robe thing, right, in Gautami, we can go into, but we don't leave it as a mess when we, yeah. So if we need something, we can go in and take it, because we're few in number, yeah, so it works well. When we get much bigger, then we may have to have one person who's the storekeeper who takes people in and gets them what they need and so on. Okay? When you're working with any of the tools that we have here, yeah, any of the tools, the appliances and things like that, we should take very good care of them and not mistreat them, not leave them out so they get rusted or they get run over or stepped on or kicked around or whatever. If we're cleaning things out, we should really talk to the community and make sure that we aren't throwing out something that is actually a tool, but we think is a piece of junk. Okay. When I was a little kid, I thought I was going to be so good and pull the weeds out of my parents' newly planted plant bed, and I pulled out all the plants that they had just bought. You know, so this happens, yeah, because I thought they looked like weeds to me, yeah, but they weren't. So, so we have to be careful when we're cleaning things out. Clearly, if something's a piece of rubbish, you know, throw it out. But if we're not sure what it is, yeah, or if it's stored somewhere and, you know, then we really need to ask, because it has happened. I remember you commenting once that things that we actually need and use have gotten tossed out because people didn't know what they were when they were cleaning things out. So we need to be careful about that. It never hurts to ask, you know? Just bring the thing to the stand-up meeting and say, can we throw this out? Yeah? Okay. Yeah, so being very careful with that, and then not giving things that belong to the Sangha to our personal friends as personal gifts. Unless, of course, we ask the Sangha if we can have that object and then, you know, give it away. Or like, you know, when I go on my next trip, I'll be taking things with, but they're to give to the people on the trip. Yeah. So, and I'm doing it on behalf of the Abbey. I'm not doing it as a personal individual. Yeah. And so those things we've already agreed as a community, right? Mm-hmm. That, you know, you can give away. So that's not stealing. Okay. We've also, I think, agreed as a community that when, you know, we receive offerings of junk food, that we usually offer it on the altar, and then as much as possible, unless people get to it first, then we give it to yes, okay? And then when we have, you know, a lot of extra food, we give that away. Although there, you know, what one person considers extra, another person may like. So there too, we have to be very careful and, maybe ask the community, or the community just, trusts the kitchen manager. And sometimes the kitchen manager gives something away that you like, But the kitchen manager should not just, well, everything I don't like we'll give away and everything I like we'll keep, Yeah, they should, be more, more sophisticated than that, and more caring about the other members of the community, that they get the food that they like as well.
I did have just a question.
Uh-huh.
I talked to Judy, because we've given them quite a bit of chips and things lately, and I sometimes feel badly about giving the kids that kind of stuff, and she says they've got so much energy to, like, steam to blow off. She says the stuff goes in and, it's gone. But I sometimes wonder if giving the young teens things that are not nutritional, because sometimes sugar can kick in a lot of energy that's not very helpful.
Right. Right. Yeah, I have that same kind of doubt, And sometimes, they don't care very much about nutrition there when they want the kids to have food cards to McDonald's and stuff like that, which I would never give one of the teens. So I would much rather that we gave nutritious food. But then when people give us this food, we've got to do something with it. So, to me it would feel not very nice to throw it out either. And I don't advocate us eating it. Although...
We all ate a fair amount of that stuff growing up. We're
Still alive.
Yeah. Yeah.
Just when you get older, it doesn't do as well in the system like it did.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. Okay. Compared with throwing all the sentient beings of the 10 directions into a dark prison out of anger. That's pretty heavy. Okay. It is worse to tell a bodhisattva, you are horrid, I don't want to see you ever. And turn your back on him or her. Okay, so negativities, here we're talking towards the field, the recipient, so acting that way towards a Buddha or a bodhisattva is quite negative. Even though the Buddha or the bodhisattva is going to make prayers for us, and in some way it winds up as being some kind of good connection because we'll meet that person again due to the power of the prayers they're making for us, still we've created a lot of negative karma in relationship to them. Okay. So we need to be careful about that. Compared with destroying as many stupas as there are water molecules in the Ganges River, okay, so a lot, it is taught that feeling anger or malice towards a bodhisattva or speaking unkindly to one is a far greater negativity. Okay, so again, because of the power of the object. So why is a bodhisattva such a powerful object? They're working for the benefit of all sentient beings. If we do something destructive in relationship to them, we're hindering their ability to benefit sentient beings. So we're hindering sentient beings. Okay, all sentient beings. So that's, why. Okay, compared with restoring the sight of all sentient beings in the 10 directions who have been blinded, okay, out of love for them. The way this sentence is worded, it's like, I've been blinded out of love for them. No, it's compared with out of love, compared with restoring the sight of all sentient beings in the 10 directions. Well, somehow you get what I mean. Your motivation is out of love for them. You're restoring them, okay? Yeah, and those who have been blinded. Or releasing all prisoners and establishing them in the joy of the Brahma realm. Okay, so compared to those two, it is taught that aspiring to the Mahayana, wanting to meet bodhisattvas or praising them brings far greater merit. Okay, so again, you know, the reason is obvious that, well, maybe not so obvious, but, you know, when you aspire to the Mahayana, you know, you're putting that seed to follow that path. And by following that path, then you're going to be able to benefit so many sentient beings in a much broader way than restoring their sight or liberating them from prison or whatever. Okay? And then, of course, wanting to meet bodhisattvas or praising bodhisattvas, again, very virtuous, because it's helping us to set our aspiration for the direction that we want to go in. Yeah. And since that direction, you know, is the direction of benefiting sentient beings, and since praising them or wanting to meet them, you know, by doing that, we could offer service, we could make offerings and so on, then we could really help them in all their different projects. Yeah. So also included in this is if bodhisattvas are doing, you know, projects and you volunteer service and you're helping them to complete their projects. Because, you know, like we were talking before, you know, a leader can only do as much good as the followers who help them. Yeah. Because the leader could have many qualities and brilliant ideas, but without a lot of followers who help enact them, then things are really bottlenecked. Compare it with killing all sentient beings of Jambudvipa, in other words, our world, or stealing their belongings. It is more serious to prevent someone from offering a bodhisattva a handful of food. So interfering with people who want to create virtue. Yeah, somebody wants to offer, you know, a handful of food to a bodhisattva, and we say, you know, keep it for yourself, or give it to me, or, you know, that's kind of crummy, or, you know, we discourage them in some way, then we're preventing them from, you know, making that contact with the bodhisattva, and we're, you know, and them nourishing the bodhisattva's body, which enables that bodhisattva to really continue their practice and their work for sentient beings. Okay. Then the second one is powerful with respect to the basis. So this means the person doing the action. Okay. So regret what you did before. Guard yourself from it in the future, and do not conceal your negativities. By way of antidote, perform virtue. In other words, if we practice the four opponent powers, you know, we don't conceal our negativities, we practice the four opponent powers, then that makes the, you know, our virtue heavier and our non-virtue lighter. Okay. Then the second point, the negativities of the wise are lighter. Okay, because the wise know that they need to purify. And the wise know that even if they did something negative, they need to generate regret as soon as possible afterwards. Okay. Minimizing these, I'm not sure what these is, the negativities. Minimizing your negativities, and priding yourself on being knowledgeable. So minimizing your negativities in the sense of thinking, oh, they don't matter. Yeah, that's what it must mean. And then priding yourself on being knowledgeable are particularly serious for creating non-virtue, you know, on our part. And the third point, compared to householder bodhisattvas, offering to the conquerors of butter lamps as tall, wait a minute, compared to a householder bodhisattva's offering to the conquerors of butter lamps as tall as Mount Meru and as numerous as the sentient beings in the three realms, an ordained bodhisattva's offering to the conquerors of a single oil lamp is superior. Okay? So what they're saying there is that an ordained bodhisattva, because of the basis holding the monastic precepts, is able to create much more virtue than a householder bodhisattva, because the ordained bodhisattvas creates more merit by offering a single lamp than the householder bodhisattvas do of offering lamps as tall as Mount Meru and as numerous as sentient beings in the three realms.
Does that apply to negativities too, that they would be more intense?
Yeah, I think that they would be more intense in the sense that you've got to overcome the impact of your precepts to create the negativity. So, it seems that you have to put your intention, something's going to be stronger to make you overcome that. Yeah. But again, if you're wise, then you know how to purify it. Okay, so 50-50. Okay, following this logic, in comparison with those who do not possess ethical restraints, those who do have a far more efficient practice of the path. Okay, so those who have taken precepts, any of the ethical restraints, the Pratimoksha Bodhisattva Tantra precepts, and keep them well, then, your practice of the path is far more efficient because you as a basis who's acting is somebody with more virtue. Yeah. So you're going to know how to create negative, virtuous actions, and, and it's going to be more powerful than an ordinary person doing it. Okay. Compared to the non-virtuous deeds committed unceasingly over 100 years by a householder who engages in all 10 non-virtues. Okay, that's a pretty messed up person. It is far more serious for a bhikshu of faulty ethical discipline with the banner of saffron robes to partake of the offerings of the faithful for a single day. Okay, so all this non-virtue of doing all the non-virtuous deeds for 100 years by a householder, it's more serious for a single day for a monastic who has faulty ethical conduct yet wears the robes to accept the offerings of the faithful. Okay? Why is this so negative? Because they're not keeping their part of the deal. And in the sense that people support you because they believe that you are keeping your precepts, you're creating virtue. But if you're not creating virtue and all you have behind you is, faulty ethical discipline, a bunch of non-virtue that you don't care about, you're not even, purifying, but you're accepting the offerings that people make out of faith in the Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha, then, that's really deceptive, that's lying, that's putting on a false front, isn't it? So we need to be very careful of that and, not take the offerings for granted and do our best. It doesn't mean we have to be perfect. We're not, we're not bodhisattvas yet. We're not stream enterers yet. But we do our very best to do what we signed up for. Yeah. And you'd be surprised sometimes people I mean, there's people who actually commit parajikas who continue to wear their robes and continue to receive the offerings that the Sangha's given. It's incredibly negative to do that. Yeah, because they've committed a defeat. So their precepts are really, irrevocably damaged. And then pretending to be ordained on top of that, that's the kind of big lie that we always talk about pretending to have realizations we don't. Here it's pretending to have precepts that we don't, and then using it as a way to get your livelihood. Yeah, so really very, very negative. Yeah, and I've heard of people who do that. And then, so not only people who break their precepts but continue to wear robes, but then you have people who were never ordained who put on the precepts and go places pretending to be a monastic so that they can collect offerings. That also, it's a quick ticket to the hell realms. Yeah, and you see people doing that. Yeah, in Southeast Asia, it happens. People do that, and at His Holiness teachings, there's a lot of, we're not sure if they're ordained or not ordained. They're from Bangladesh. They don't seem to know much Dharma. Yeah, but they're wearing robes, so we're not sure, are they ordained or not ordained? Yeah, but they're there to collect alms, not to listen to the teachings. So, I don't know. Okay. It is taught that it is due to the basis that this negativity is so powerful, because it's somebody pretending to be something they're not. Yeah. Okay, then on the basis of, so we see here, that if we do our best in our practice, like again, we don't have to be perfect, but we do our best, then we can create, as monastics, incredible virtue. But if we just are like, lazy and have this attitude of everybody's going to give me everything, and have no respect for our own precepts, then we create a lot of great non-virtues. So it can go either way depending on our state of mind. Okay, on the basis of precepts, depending on whether they are threefold, twofold, or are the one-day vows, whatever good virtue or non-virtue is done is proportionally greater. So if you're a vow holder, I don't know what threefold and twofold mean. Anybody have any idea?
Or the one day.
The one-day vows are like
the
the
novice.
You mean like all three, like the three sets of vows, 2 sets of vows.
Bodhisattva priest.
No, it doesn't kind of add up.
Yeah, I'm not sure. Yeah, I really don't know. Anyway, whatever virtue or non-virtue you do is greater if you're a precept holder. Okay. It would be preferable to eat blazing lumps of molten iron than for those of degenerate ethical discipline to fail to abstain thoroughly from the above negativities. Okay. So if you have degenerate ethical discipline, we should abstain from those negativities. Yeah, they usually say this thing about eating hot molten iron is they're saying that's like if you don't keep your precepts and you accept offerings, that's tantamount to it. Next to negativities committed in relation to the Dharma, the negativities of the 10 non-virtues are insignificant. Okay? So, be careful with the negativities that we create in relationship to the Dharma. So, for example, if people offer cloth to wrap the Dharma text in, but we say, oh, I want to use this to make a chugu for myself, or I want to make a shirt out of this beautiful cloth. So you take the cloth that's offered to the Dharma jewel, you're stealing from the Dharma jewel. Okay? Or people make offerings to print books for free distribution, but you take the money and use it for something else. Yeah, like for some personal thing. Or stealing from the Buddha, people give maybe a piece of jewelry to the Buddha, and you think, oh, if I sell that, I could get so much money for it. So you take it and sell it. If they say, if the Sangha community, somebody has put a diamond necklace on your statue of the Buddha, yeah, you don't want to leave it there because somebody could take it, yeah. On the other hand, you don't want to just take it as an individual and sell it, yeah. So the community has to deliberate and use it. If you do sell it, use the proceeds for something, to make some other kind of offering to the Buddha. Yeah, so don't sell it and then use it to buy a new car for the Sangha. You sell it and then maybe you need to get more statues, or you need to make another, like a break front or something, and you repair your altar where the Buddha sits, or, something like that. Okay.
They say in relation to the 3 jewels,
Pardon?
that point seems like it would make more sense if it said activities committed in relation to the 3 jewels.
Yeah. Yeah, it just says in relation to the Dharma. I think must be the Buddha as well. And he already talked about the Sangha.
I see.
Okay. Then the third factor that makes it powerful is with respect to the action itself. So among the different kinds of generosity, giving the teachings, and among the different kinds of offering your practice of the instructions are the best. Okay, so we already talked about in relationship to the non-virtues, we went through the 10 and the order in which, from heavy to light. But here, with respect to the action itself, if the generosity of the teachings is said to be the highest generosity. Why? Because when you share the Dharma with others, you're showing them the path to awakening. Yeah. And that's the best you can give them, best gift you can give them. Of course, teaching, if you're a donor who's sponsoring Dharma books for free distribution, I think that's also quite virtuous, helping to spread the Dharma. If you're doing your recitations out loud so that the animals and insects around you can hear, that's also quite good if you're using the Dharma to counsel people. Okay. And then offering your practice of the instructions are best. So, making an offering of your practice. So usually we talk about offering our practice to our spiritual mentors. And but it could be, I think, also offering our practice in terms of embodying the Dharma so that people who see us get inspired and want to practice. I talked to some old friends of mine when I was in India this last time, and His Holiness teaches them individually. They're quite extraordinary practitioners. And they told me that they decided to offer their practice to His Holiness. And so they made a PowerPoint with their understanding of emptiness. And they offered that to His Holiness and showed it to him. And apparently he was quite pleased. Yeah. think it'd be nice to invite them to come up here
Yeah.
and show that. Yeah, I'd like to invite them here. Okay, so then it says there are many other kinds of powerful karma with regard to the action. Yeah. Okay, then powerful with respect to the intention behind it. So anything done with such strong factors within you, such as virtue imbued with the thought to achieve omniscience. That's going to be very strong, you know, if you have strong bodhicitta. You know how sometimes you really have a strong feeling of bodhicitta? And this is the reason why, you know, we generate bodhicitta, you know, why His Holiness does the ceremony of generating bodhicitta at all the teachings he gives. Because just the fact of generating bodhicitta, you know, in his presence is going to make it a more intense feeling for us and make that feeling more powerful. Okay, so yeah, so that's a powerful virtue. Or in the case of wrongdoing with anger, malice, and so forth, that's going to make it stronger. And for a long time, so whatever virtue or non-virtue you do often, and you do over a long period of time. So that's going to be powerful karmas with regard to the intention. Yeah. So there might be, you know, some things that we do very, very regularly in terms of virtuous actions. You know, we bow before teachings. Yeah. And in terms of negative actions, I'll leave that to, you can make your own example. So, but because we do them often, it becomes more powerful. Okay, and then of course, you know, the power of the intention behind it. Okay, so I think that also impacts, you know, when you take precepts too, because I know when I take precepts, I have a powerful intention for taking them. It's not just, well, you know, kind of, yeah, but you create some kind of powerful intention. Okay, so we've talked a lot about what makes things powerful, and yeah, but it's very helpful to understand this, isn't it? Really, you know, makes us kind of look at the actions that we do and assess which ones are valuable and which ones aren't. Any questions or comments about this before we go on? Yeah.
All of this stuff makes really intense sense, especially the one about monastics keeping their precepts. Because you know, I was raised Catholic, and almost every person that I ever talked to who quit being a Catholic said it was because they knew a bad priest. So, you know, it really makes sense. And if you think that you can not keep your precepts and nobody notices, then you're fooling yourself.
Yeah. Yeah, people definitely notice. Yeah, but some people conceal their negativities. And when you conceal your negativities, then it's like compounded interest. The negativity just gets stronger and stronger and stronger.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
I mean, we see that with NBC, and that's one of the principles of NBC is anytime we try to hide, you know, our negativities, it's a lot worse.
Yeah. Yeah. And actually, it's interesting with our precepts. This applies more to the monks than the nuns. But the monks, if they hide their precepts, if they've committed a Sangha Visesa, which is the second most serious category, then every day that they conceal their breakage of that kind of precept, that many days they have to do, you know, a period of penance where they stay apart from the Sangha.
Why is that more for the monks than the nuns?
For the nuns, I don't know. They don't have that. But what they do have for the monks, the period of Manata, where you lose your privileges, is a week. For the nuns, that's 2 weeks. So we get double on that one, but we don't have the concealing part.
Can't really leave the community.
Yeah, that's right, yes. A nun can't, isn't supposed to go off and live alone, so yeah, that's why.
With regard to speaking or thinking harshly about bodhisattvas,
Mm-hmm.
how is that affected by not knowing if that person is a bodhisattva?
Well, it's going to be heavier if you know they're a bodhisattva and you criticize them. Put it that way. It's not going to be karma-free if you don't know they're a bodhisattva. Okay, but definitely if you know them, it's going to be heavier. Okay. I remember one time watching Genso Jampa Tekchok, because there was one lama who wanted to do this very, very large project, and a lot of people in the general community were not supportive of it. They said, it has this fault and that fault and this fault and that fault, and they were against it being done. So somebody asked Genso Jampa Tekchok, should this lama, what do you think about this lama going ahead and doing this, building this statue or whatever it was they were building? And Genso Rinpoche said something to the effect of, I'm not quoting exactly, I think it's really good to build schools and hospitals. Yeah? So, that was like such an example. He didn't say anything directly about that, but he was saying, what he thinks is good to do. Yeah. So in that way, he was not criticizing the activity of, first of all, somebody who was well respected, and second of all, of a virtuous activity that person was doing. Yeah. So I remember that. That was quite like, and then the person asked again, well, what do you think of this and that? And because Rinpoche gave the same answer. It was like, he was saying, you're not going to trick me. I'm not going to create any negative karma. Yeah. Anything else? Yeah.
I just wanted to make a comment that as we go through these teachings, I become more and more aware of how often I simply have no idea what my intention is. I'm so on automatic, and unless I get an uncomfortable feeling, or or somebody notices. A lot of times I just do things and I don't think about why I'm doing. So when you start seeing that, here's all this opportunity to create virtue, and I have no idea because I'm not paying attention to the reason for doing what I'm doing.
Yeah.
So this has really brought that to my attention, is how much I do things in automatic, how often I do things that I'm spaced out or indifferent.
Yeah.
Just habit, just rote, just automatic, just not even thinking.
Yeah. Yeah.
And what lost opportunity it is.
Right. So these teachings are very good for pointing that out to us, aren't they? The lost opportunities, the time of just not even knowing our own intention, yeah, and the times of spacing out. And I know for myself, personally, sometimes I do something and it's only years later that I'm able to actually be honest about what my intention was when I did that action. That at the time I was doing it, I was saying to myself, nah, 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 nah. There was something else underneath going on that I didn't want to fess up to, and it was only years later that I was able to do that. Yeah, because I wasn't even aware of the rotten intention underneath it. Yeah, yeah. So these teachings are quite good for helping us to increase our mindfulness and introspective awareness and conscientiousness.
I have a more practical question. When a lay person is a teacher, Dharma teacher, and they're publishing books, and so they have some income to that. So the money, actually, they can't spend on any personal family life issues. They have to spend it on the Dharma.
Okay, so this is, how to deal with income from Dharma books. Okay, here at the Abbey, we have a special Dharma account. All the royalties go in there. It's very simple. And it gets used for Dharma things and for making offerings to teachers and so on. For a lay person, I remember talking with one of my friends who I respect a lot, and he told me that he considers the royalties like payment for his work. Yeah. And so he sees that as, like you do a job and you get payment. So he uses that money, I believe, for his family. It's difficult, because they say, all the proceeds from selling Dharma books should be reinvested in the Dharma and not used for anything else. Well, if you do that, then eventually at some point in 50 million eons, there will be no more money that is not delegated for the Dharma because it's all going to, So, and then I remember my friends at Wisdom Publication and Lama Yeshe Wisdom Archives, which, Lama and Rinpoche had them set up, and they are getting paid, and they're living off that money. And Nick said to me, what was it he said to me that Lama said to him? Something about, there's some non-virtue because it's from selling Dharma books, but there's a lot of virtue in creating the Dharma books. Something like that, But, it's under the directions of our teachers, and they know that these people have to live somehow. So, in old Tibet, what they did is all these things were just privately sponsored by donors, because you didn't have publishing companies. Somebody offered the money to publish a certain book, and then that book was distributed to the people of the monastery or whatever. Now, you can do this for, free distribution work, which is like with my books, that's how I started, just with free distribution. But then the book only gets to people basically in that country. And if you really want to benefit sentient beings and get the book out there in a broader way, then the publishing company, they have much better distribution. So you have a publishing company do it. And then they, of course, sell the books. And as a nun, I feel great because all the royalties go in a special account we use for the Dharma. Because I don't need to support a family. It's very easy, okay? But for lay people, I think it's difficult, So,
Question from last week. Maybe I didn't remember this right, but I kind of had the impression that it was last week or the week before anyway, I read through in Lamrim Shimbo about the 10 misdeeds. And I thought when we went over sexual misconduct, we had the idea that children weren't covered so well in how it was written.
Yeah, in the traditional way of talking about unwise and unkind sexual conduct, they say people who are under the control of others, so little children would fall under that. But in ancient India, you were married often before you hit puberty, and then you went into the marriage at the time of puberty.
I was interested when I read through this that it seems like actually there's a lot in there that should protect all the situations, but I don't know if it's actually was conceived of that way, but when I read these things, it says here, those indicated in the sutras, such as your mother and those protected by mothers, or those whom you should not have intercourse, or those under the protection of a family. And then there's commentary on that, like those haven't yet become brides and all that stuff. And then there's one where it says, unwilling. It's in this one verse.
What are you reading out of?
The Lamrim, yeah, these
Oh.
quotes, and this last one is from Ashwagosha. Inappropriate, under inappropriate times, unwilling.
Mm.
You know, so there's actually a lot in here that I
Yeah.
thought covered all the bases, but it doesn't seem like it was maybe.
In most of the explanations, you don't find
Yeah, right.
all of that.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, you do find the one that somebody who's under the protection of somebody else. Yeah.
Or even, and here it says, the other one is like, those protected by family, Lama Tsongkhapa says, are those who have not yet become brides and are protected by kinsfolk, such as their fathers, who are protected by a father-in-law or a mother-in-law, who are protected by a guard, or who, in the absence of these, are protected even by themselves. But, you know, it's kind of like it didn't really hold.
Yeah.
It didn't take root.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think some stuff like that, we just have to come back to not harming others.
Yes. Exactly. You know, that's listing out all the different things to make people aware of it, because sometimes people are not thinking, you know, like all these cases of date rape. I think many times the guys are just not thinking that this is a harmful action. It doesn't even cross their mind. You know, if you've done some of this study and it's like, oh, somebody who's not willing, then, oh, you know, is this person willing or not willing? Well, sometimes it's difficult to tell. So now they have all this on college campus. Yes means yes and no means no, and you have to ask all these questions in the middle of things, which I don't know about. You know? I mean, come on. Yeah. So, yeah, so it's difficult. Yeah, but if you have in your mind, I don't want to harm anybody, and you have that intention strongly, then you're going to pick up on a lot of subtleties and so on. But if you have in mind only my own pleasure, you're not going to pick up on anything.
I think it's great that things are listed out, but sometimes when things aren't, that's when I'm saying that,
Yeah, yeah.
you know.
Come back to the basic premise. Okay. Anybody online have anything?
Lots of expressions of gratitude.
Oh, I want to hear them. Except they all go to the author of Gomchen Lamrim, not to me. Yeah.
One more thing. Sometimes when we might do something virtuous and somebody does something non-virtuous, say I make an offering on the altar and just set a $100 bill there.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe on a sharing the Dharma day when there's 50 people who've never been here before and it disappears. Am I setting that person up to that stole that through not being wise and make how I made my?
Well, no. I mean, no. You're committing virtue.
Right.
Yeah.
And also-
But if you think further ahead, that you know maybe putting a $100 bill on the altar isn't such a good idea. Yeah. Then you might, you know, put it somewhere else with a note that says, "Please use for the Buddha," or something like that.
I guess I'm thinking about my involvement in the conditions for someone else.
For somebody else to create non-virtue. Yeah. 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 That's good. It's good to think about that.
I saw somebody stole a cookie here when it's off the altar.
Yeah.
I'm not sure who did it.
But it's kind of the thing, you know, if we leave our stuff hanging around and don't put it away, we're setting up the conditions for somebody else to take it. And yeah, misplace it or lose it or whatever.
And that's why we put some locked boxes for Dhamma, so that people wouldn't
Yeah.
have a situation of
Yeah, yeah, because we did have this situation one time. Actually, 2 times it's happened.
Yeah, that came to mind. That was a good idea to lock those so people couldn't do
Yeah.
that.
Just one doubt that came up for me when we were looking at wrong views,
Mm-hmm.
that I think the text said that it was the desire to deny the existence of an existent object, but then when you study it in mind and mental factors, wrong views includes superimposition as well. And so I was curious
Yeah.
about why there's this
Yeah, I've noticed that too.
And then
Yeah.
I just read in Geshe Tashi Tseng's teachings that it's these 10 non-virtues are like the main types of non-virtues. They're not pervasive, they're not exhaustive,
Right.
but they're like the main ones. But
Yeah,
so that cut that out.
yeah. Yeah. Okay.